Welcome to the Spiritually Lit Me. Each week, we are honored to host powerful speakers from around the world sharing their stories, experiences, and hope with us. All of our speakers are recorded and shared through our Inogram YouTube channel and our audio speaker WhatsApp groups, so the message can reach those who need it. If you are listening to this recording and you're struggling, seeking help, or simply have a question, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can contact us anytime at spirituallylit24@gmail.com, and we promise to get back to you. Tonight, we have invited Reggie White and Shanell to share their experience, strength, and hope on the topic from trash to treasure for the next 40 minutes. After that, the meeting will be open for sharing back. We will give you assigned 10 minutes before the time is up, guys. However you want to divide the time, that's up to you guys. Yeah, much power to you, and I'll hand it over. Who's gonna start?
Well, my name is Reggie White. I'm an alcoholic and I'm an ex-problem smoker. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, sir. I'm Shanell. I'm an addict and alcoholic.
Okay. And I was initially I was asked to do this with my brother Ronald. My brother Ronald was like the hardest person in AA to pin down and speak anywhere. He's a really busy man, and then it was going to be me alone. But I thought it would be much more interesting to do it with Shanell. And the way I think about it, the thought that I've had in mind is what would interest me. One of the things that would interest me is to look not only at my journey, what journey I had to get to God, but also the journey that Shanell had to get to God. And see, I sponsor Shanell. And you could kind of peek behind the curtain and to watch and see what a sponsorship relationship is like from both ends, right? And to see how that worked out. And so that people can see that men can work with women in some cases and women can work with men, and it's one addict helping another addict. I'm not saying that that always has to be the case. Some people think other ways, and that's fine. I'm not God. I believe that there are a lot of different paths that we take to get to the same destination. And anyway, as I'm running my mouth here, I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to talk about what I initially had to do to make it here. And I first came, and I started, and you'll hear me talk about, I know this is a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, and you'll hear me talk a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous because I came here in February of 1987. And when I came, I went to a rehab, and in those rehabs, you couldn't get help if you were a cocaine addict. See, and I was a smoker. I had smoked my way into the program, and I had no illusions about that. Matter of fact, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I thought I was strict. I had my problem was strictly in smoking, freebasing and smoking crack, right? And I came to the fellowship in February 7th of 1987 because I had had this girl's car for a couple of weeks. I left work like I always did, and I had done this a million times. And by that time, I had already been circling the drain, right? Because I'd been smoking crack. But what I would always do is I would, on Fridays, every Friday, I would drop the girl off because I had smoked my car away a long time before now. But I would drop the girl off at her house, drive all the way into LA, and because all the good dope was down in LA, down in South Central LA. And I would come and I would buy a whole bunch of stuff and go back up to her house, and we would spend the whole weekend, getting high and stuff like that. But this time I decided I was going to test it before I made it back to her house. And so I got stuck in LA. You know what happened, guys. And I'm sitting in her car for 2 weeks, and I'm stuck in LA for 2 weeks. I hadn't shaved, showered, brushed my teeth, combed my hair. I hadn't changed out of that suit that I left work in on that Friday. And by now, not only had I spent up all of our money, but I owed a whole bunch of dangerous people in South Central LA a whole lot of money. And they were looking for me. And when they caught me, if I didn't have their money, they were going to do some stuff to me where you'd have a different speaker here today. But I decided to, before then, about 6 months before then, and a few months before then, my two brothers had gone to rehab. Ronald went first, and then Ralph went. And I tried reaching out to them, and I didn't even know what rehab was. I had no idea what rehab was. I didn't go into rehab so that I could get sober or so that I could get clean, so that I could get well. I went there because I was scared. I went there because some people were chasing me, and this was the only place I could go where it was safe and nobody could get to me. So anyway, I reached my brother Ralph. He got me into that rehab, the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center, which was downtown on Skid Row in downtown LA. I walked in there on February 7, 1987, more dead than alive. I stank so badly, I have no idea how the guy was able to do intake on me, right? How he was able to stay in the same room long enough to do intake on me. And I went in there. They let me sleep for a week. They called it detox, and then they sent me to this thing called an AA meeting. In this AA meeting, I got my first big book from this sponsor, who I asked this guy to be my sponsor. He bought me the big book, and I read that big book, and I started. And you know what? I got a real big relief that day because I never knew the answer to that question, right? A lot of you guys are going to know that question when I say it out loud. When I started reading that doctor's opinion in that big book, that very first night I went to the AA meeting, I found out. I was like, it shocked me. I never knew what was wrong with me, right? I thought I just had no willpower. I thought I was just weak. I thought that it was my problem. I thought it wasn't even really, I knew that I had a problem with crack, right? But I didn't think I had a problem with alcohol or weed well, I knew I had a problem with angel dust, PCP. That was a problem. I quit that on my own. But all the other stuff, LSD, Alliums, Quaaludes, all the other stuff that went with it, I didn't think I had a problem with just crack. I thought, but I looked in there and it told me that actually I crossed an invisible line, and that once I took one of anything, once I cross that invisible line, when I take one of anything, I trigger an allergy. And that allergy is the phenomenon of craving. Okay, what the hell does that mean? What does that look like? Well, what that means is once I take one of anything, there's no predicting where I'm going to end up and how I'm going to stop. And I was like, shit, there's something really, and I thought I was just weak. I thought I was by myself and I was scared to talk to people about this. And I didn't know that it was actually a disease. And I felt relief in that. But see, if that was the only problem, I would think, well, Nancy Reagan, who's the wife of a president here, had a program where it was just say no. Okay, so why don't I just say no then? I don't need the rest of this shit that you got, excuse me, the rest of this stuff you guys are talking about. All of these steps and telling on each other. We don't tell our business and we don't and pay back my money, man. I'm pay back. Are you kidding me? I got away with it now. But anyway, you guys said no. Because if I could just say no, I wouldn't need the rest of this stuff. But they said no. It's a second problem, which is even bigger than that. And what's that problem? Well, it's a mental obsession. Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, the way they explained it was this. They said an alcoholic at certain times is without defense against that first one. I have no mental defense against that. I cannot bring to my mind with sufficient force the memory of the pain and suffering of even a week or a month ago. And they said that what I'm going to do eventually is I'm going to drink. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So it explained what happened when I take that first one, right? That I can't stop. Okay, then just don't take the first one. Just say no. No, but then it explained to me why every single Friday when I got paid, and I said, I'm not going to do that again. I said, this week, I'm going to bring that money home and I would swear and I would lie to whatever girl I was living with at the time, right, before they kicked me out for my behavior. And I'd say, I'm going to come home this time. I'm going to have the bill money. I'm not, I said, I remember I would be at the point, see, some of y'all wasn't as bad as me. I would say, I'm at least going to stop as soon as I cash my check, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to get myself a good meal. And I'm going to just sit down and eat, right? And sometimes I would even stop and buy that meal, and that meal would go untouched because something in me And I never knew that it was that mental obsession thing, but something in me where I'm stone cold sober and not a cloud in the sky, and I would just have to go to the dope man. I had no choice, and I didn't understand that I didn't have a choice. Okay, so if once I take one, I'm screwed. Okay, that's fine. Don't take the first one. But then you tell me that then because of that mental obsession part, I can't stop myself taking the first one. Well, then I'm fucked, right? I can't stop myself from taking the first one. And if I take the first one, I'm screwed. So, but they said that Reggie, but we got a spiritual solution. What you're suffering from is a soul sickness, and there's a spiritual solution to that problem. It took me a long time to get around to that, but eventually I got around to that. Eventually, we started the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop, where we started going through the steps, and we did it as a group together, which is one of the big things. Because alone, I can't do this, but together we can do anything. And my life took off. I got well, and I didn't realize I'd come in here on a high pop. I had a good work history. I'm making a lot of money. So now I'm making a lot of money. I get that girlfriend in CA early on. Within 2 weeks, we move in together. Now we moved in together, and I'm making a lot of money. And then the guy handpicked me to bring his company back from Atlanta, and I'm making six figures, and I'm flying back and forth. And life has gotten so good, but I'm living in another city, and so I'm no longer taking panels to prisons and taking panels down on Skid Row, and I'm not going to meetings, and I'm not calling my sponsor. In other words, I got well. Okay, that's not the worst thing in the world, because why do we do this other than to we practice these? I would tell myself we practice these principles in all our affairs. So I'm paying for my family. I got my family taken care of. I'm working. I don't have time to do the rest of this stuff, and everything is cool. And that's when we get to the part where we talk about don't let the life that AA gave get in the way. The CA gave you get in the way of your CA life, because now I got no balance in my life. I'm not doing any of the things in Cocaine Anonymous that got me all the things that Cocaine Anonymous got me. And the trials came to Bill talked about this. Bill talked about that. And if you're a guy like me, if you're as sick as I am, what you have to do is you have to do a lot of work. He said if an alcoholic fails to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through self-sacrifice and working with others, he won't be able to survive certain trials and low spots ahead. And if he can, he'll drink. And if he drinks, he'll die. And all hope will be lost indeed. Okay, I'd stop going to meetings. I'd stop calling the sponsor. I'd stop going on panels to prisons and taking panels down on Skid Row. I'd stop doing all the things in Cocaine Anonymous that got me all the things Cocaine Anonymous got me. Don't let the life the CA gave you get in the way of your CA life. Then my little girl got sick. She she had that seizure, and they gave her the medication that tore her apart and was killing her. Eventually, the doctors at Cedars-Sinai Hospital lied to us and said that, oh, we figured out what's wrong with your daughter. What they figured out is that my daughter, that she had poisoning from Tegretol, Tegretol poisoning, Tegretol pneumonitis. And they lied to us because they made a money decision. And they said they had to do exploratory surgery on them. And I said, do it. And when they opened her up, they killed her. They made a money decision to kill my baby. Right. And I kind of fell off the deep end because I know my feet were no longer trained, and I was no longer doing the things in Cocaine Anonymous that had kept me sober. Right. And I was unprepared for that tragedy. And I didn't do the things that we do in Cocaine Anonymous when we have tragedies, like get at the podium and talk to new people and call a sponsor and sit in the middle of the herd to you guys to love us back to life. All I could do was shut down, and curse God when my baby died. And when I cursed God, I lasted 11 months like that. And eventually I went to a bar and I drank. And when I drank, I realized how much of an alcoholic I was. I had smoked so much crack and so much dope, I'd forgotten how much of an alcoholic I was. And when I went back to that bar and I drank, it hit me immediately how much of an alcoholic I was. And I only drank for a couple of weeks. And then she came in the bar. You know her. you know, the short skirt, long legs, low cut dress, gorgeous, and gave me that look. You know the look, y'all. It's a trip how we know each other, right? And she gave me one look, and I knew that that was my person, right? That was my tribe. That was a smoke. And I gave her the interview. Do you get high? She said yes, and we were off smoking and did that for 2 weeks. Then it was the anniversary of my baby's death, and I wanted to see God, so I took a bunch of pills and I committed suicide. I was pronounced dead on arrival. They brought me back. Second worst day of my life is coming to and not looking in the face of God, but looking in the face of my mom and the people that love me. And that triggered because now I'm hating myself, I'm hating God, I'm hating you guys, I'm hating everybody. I don't have my baby anymore, I don't have my sobriety anymore, and I was off and running for 16 years. It took 16 years before I could make it back to you guys, and I became what's known, what I call a serial relapser, right? Because I would go in the meetings. Well, what I started doing, I would sneak back. I tried to sneak back to Cocaine Anonymous because I didn't want anything to do with God. But I was also trying to sneak back to you guys because of my pride. I had all this pride, and I was ruled. What I was terrified by and ruled by is what you guys thought of me. What you guys thought of me meant more to me than anything in the world. And what you guys thought of me wasn't always what you said or what you did, but what was in my head, what I thought you thought of me. So for 16 years, I was in and out of these programs. I would go to all these rehabs and I would go in there and for 16 years, I'm relapsing over and over and over and over and over again. And everybody's giving up on me. I'm going in all these rehabs, in and out of these rehabs. And I gave up on myself. Every single person I know gave up on me. I became a guy, and they should have. For 16 years, I'm relapsing and I'm breaking people's hearts, and we're a tornado in the lives of the people that love us. And for 16 years, I broke everybody's heart. I was dying. I had undiagnosed enlarged prostate. So I had no control over my bodily functions, and I'm not able to control it. And I'm shitting and pissing. Excuse me, that's like gross. But I'm not able to control my bodily functions, man. And I have glaucoma that was diagnosed but untreated. So now I got 0% vision in my right eye and 30% in my left. Since 2009, I've no longer been able to drive a car in the state of California, and I stopped being able to work, and I stopped being able to pay my own way. And that was God slowing me down. And I became a low bottom drunk, finally, a low bottom addict. And I'm that guy walking the streets every day, and I'm getting $200 a month from the county, $200 in food stamps, and I'm selling plasma twice a week to make ends meet. And eventually, my mom took me in their house because a mother's only as happy as their most unhappy child, and she allowed me to live there. And eventually, my so-called girlfriend, stole my mother's car out of there, and that was in 2017, on June 24th, 2017. And that was the beginning. That was the absolute worst day of my life, when she stole that car, and my baby brother stepped into that room and said, "You have to leave my mother's house right now." And my mother was standing behind him, looking terrified at me. And it felt like a piece of my soul left me. And I couldn't even, at that time, I wanted death more than anything in the world. And I made one right decision to go back to that same rehab I've been through twice in a 5-year period. And I called my sponsor. And my sponsor, even though I hadn't talked to him in years, Rico Cruz said, "I've been waiting for this call." And he had me walking the grounds back in 3 days later. And 3 days, and I was walking with my head down because I hadn't looked any of you in the eye in years. And Rico walked up on me and he said, "Reggie, pick your head up. You're a child of God. You don't have a right to walk with your head down anymore." He said, "God wouldn't have put you through everything he put you through for 16 years to leave you out here like this. He's got work for you to do." And before I could stop myself, the words came out of my mouth, "Would you please take me through the steps?" For the First time in 20 years, I finally asked another man for help. And God reached down and touched me that day and took away that thing that was stopping me more than anything in the world, that thing where I cared, that thing that was in me, that all I cared about is what you guys thought of me. And all of a sudden, I no longer cared what anybody thought about me. And thank God that God doesn't need my permission to work in my life, because I was still cursing God on a daily basis. And and I came out of there, and God was pouring grace on me, and I went through the, we were on the third step and never too early to pick a workshop, and we did that third step prayer, me to a God I had no belief in. And then, but I believe you guys believed, and it was enough to start. And then I went through the fourth step, and I put God on that fourth step. And when I put God on that fourth step, things started to look different. I realized God wasn't the one that gave my little girl the bad medication. I realized God wasn't the one that made that decision for my baby to die. Those were just bad doctors at both of those hospitals. And eventually I came around to realize that God wasn't the one that because I was so upset that God would rip my little girl out of my life like that so early at 4 years old. And I realized that when I look at the world differently, the world looks back differently at me. So they put it different ways in the book. They talk about a psychic change. And Dr. Silver talked about mental rearrangements in our mind. We have to do that. Dr. Young talked about you. I've been trying to affect the psychic change in Roland Hazard. And in me, it was when I started to look at the world different. I stopped looking at the world like a victim, and I started looking at the world differently. And the way I prefer to look at it is this: I realized that God held this baby in his arms, Angela Marie White, before he put her on this earth. He said, "You're gonna be tortured for long months, and you're gonna die a horrible death. So what I'm gonna do for you is I'm gonna give you to a man that's gonna love you every single day of your life." And what he did, I'm gonna give you to the best father in the world. He gave her to me, my miracle baby. And um, from that day to this, I've had a change in my way of thinking. I've had a change in the way that I look at people. And so when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, all of a sudden, when I came back, when I did that, everything changed in me. And when I came back, I started to look at people differently, because I started to look for people that relapsed and serial relapsers. And I started to say to God, I don't know that I consciously thought this, but I was thinking that God put me here for a reason. And that there are other people out here who are just like me, because it's much harder coming back as a serial relapser and as a person that relapsed. And my first time through, everything was brand new and it was fun and it was easy. And coming back is such a hard road. And I have such a soft space for them. And so that's where Shanell, I know I talked a long time, Shanell, but what I want you to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to interview Shanell, right? I'm going to bring her through this a little bit. Shanell, talk to us about how you first came to Alcoholics. What brought you to Alcoholics Anonymous, and where were you? Because you started off in South Africa. I know you're in England now. So Shanell.
Yeah, so I mean, back home in South Africa, I mean, drinking has always been a big part of my life. But I think as we make decisions when we drink and we start losing people and things because of it, I think in the early stages when we have a lot and we haven't lost enough, it's very easy for us to deny the issue, the problem. So anyway, I was on my way to Canada with my children, and we ended up in England. Don't know how it happened. It was just, it's just what happened. My family is here though, but I didn't want to come to I was CA. Although it's always been a problem of in my life, it's a big part in my life. There's always been a massive amount of consequences from the age of 12 when I broke my leg in a blackout.
Well, at the age of 12, were you just drinking or were you using as well?
Well, using started at about 13. So closely followed. But I mean, where I grew up, there wasn't really a lot to do. But you see, the problem that I faced was the social services in England, but not in South Africa. And very quickly, social services got involved with my children. Very quickly, the school started phoning my mom to say, you know, she needs to come. I can't drive the kids home because I'm drunk. Those type of things never happen in South Africa. I just did. It wasn't part of my it wasn't ever part of my life. And the threats, but the consequences started really. If I wasn't going to do something, then I was going to lose the children.
How old were you? How old were you when you had the children? Because you kind of skipped from 12 and 13 up to now. You're having consequences with kids.
Yeah, well, it was a spread over 15 years. So I've got 3 children. I was my eldest daughter is 23 this year. So I mean, it's always been like kind of on and off. I always managed to stop drinking when I found out I was pregnant. That was never an issue for me. And I think that kind of also leads to the like you know to me thinking that it's not that bad. If I can stop drinking, I even gave up cigarette smoking when I found out I was pregnant. So in my mind, alcoholics can't do that. Addicts can't do that. So they're all 5 years apart. And I must also just say, around about the age of 22, I kind of sussed it out that if I drink or use at all, my life goes to waste. So I stopped for a period of time for about 3 years, and I managed to get a very good job in Toyota in the motor trade. Managed to become very successful in that job and in that role. But then drinking very soon became, and then as soon as I drank, same as you, I forget that we concentrate so much on the using side of it that we forget what a big alcoholic I actually am. So I didn't want to come to AA. I was kind of forced in here. I still sat in meetings thinking, well, the first meeting I went to was before COVID. But in 2019, I really had to make a decision to come to AA, CA.
Well, you say you had to make a decision. How were you helped to that?
I was going to lose my children. That was it. I either had to do it or I was going to lose the children. By that time, I had multiple visits from the school principal already. And I thought they were mad. I thought they were crazy to come to me and speak to me about what a big problem I have. My mom's priest already made home visits to me and everything, prayed for me and all sorts.
I want you to tell me about your journey to AA and all the way up until where you contacted me.
So you see, the thing is, I came in 2019 and really thought they were mad. But the more we listen, we kind of relate to people, right? But very soon I also realized that I can't give up on my own. I lost that control because I made all these promises to my kids. I didn't understand anything about what was happening. And it's a realization when we kind of realize that we can't stop, although we make all these promises to our kids. And now things are getting tough because now my mom's threatening me. Because I kind of always thought that it was empty threats. These, if you don't stop now, we're going to put you out. Until they found the cops on me one night. And I was arrested again. And I was in jail. And then I came out and I thought, you know what, this is terrible. I always kind of was proud about the the lifestyle I was able to provide for my children while they were growing up. They never wanted for anything. I was very successful, and now all of a sudden I can't keep a job. I'm working the motor trade. I'm losing my driving license because I got caught drink driving with drugs in the car. So anyway, these consequences started piling up, and the problem is though, I got into the rooms of AA, and all these people are really friendly and nice, right? But my problem is I can't get through the day. My mind is driving me insane. This incredible anxious feeling that I feel in the pit of my stomach every single minute of every single day. So I'm sitting in these meetings, and it's all lovely, and people are, they all say, oh, no, we, talk about this love for each other. But then comes nighttime, and I can't get through the night. I for the longest time, I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I slept on the couch. For the longest time, that, when everyone else goes home, I'm still stuck with me. I'm alone, and I just started listening to speaker tapes. I cannot tell you, almost every single minute of every single day. And in the evenings, while the kids are home now, I'm stuck in a house where my children don't want to be alone with me. They don't even want to, my mother needs to walk into the toilet in the middle of the night if they want to go to the toilet because they're too scared to walk into me. And well, that was it, And then I sat on a meeting 2 o'clock in the morning, UK time. And that's where I found Reggie. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know exactly. I mean, he always says sharing is like storytelling, and it's absolutely, but I mean, and that was it. Somehow when someone speaks the language of our heart, we just kind of connect, right? And I found a sponsor. We worked through the steps. Now, the problem I kind of had was it was very militant in a sense that if I did something wrong, I was like kind of punished. Now, I had enough of that in my lifetime, And I'm not saying anything about, certain people need things like that when they come in. But very quickly, so I went through the steps, and I started a meeting. So this was when COVID then just started. It took me about a few months to get through this, and I started a meeting, and then I invited Reggie to come and share in our meeting. And we started talking a little bit, but then very quickly, I started thinking that I've got it now, that knowledge, that self-knowledge. And I thought I could handle it. I convinced myself I was an emotional drinker, whatever the heck that might be. I convinced myself that, it wouldn't have been so bad if I didn't go through that divorce, if I didn't move country. Anyone would use the way that I used if they had to go through that. And I went out, it was very quickly. And the day that I started drinking, oh, it was about, I can't tell you, about a month or two afterwards. I wanted to go to London to go celebrate my newly found sense of relief. And I was, with all intention, going to London that evening to get the last train back. And I had to kick my son off of me because they were begging me. Because you see, this is the thing, now a few months in, my kids are sleeping calmly. He's allowing me to walk him to school. My daughter is coming to me again to see how my day was. So I'm building up this trust. And now I'm telling them that, no, it's okay. I'm just going to London for the evening. I'll be back before you wake up tomorrow morning. And they were crying, and I had to kick my son off of me and push my daughters out the way, and off I went to London. And I missed that train back home that evening and the next. And I missed that train back home for the next 2.5 years. And somehow, I always joke with you, Reggie, but I think you know more of that period of my life than I do because most of it was in blackout.
Right. And right, because during that blackout, that's when you would contact me all the time, drunk, high, and all that. But that's okay. Okay, so and then we lost touch,
Mm.
and that was when you were. I know you were still trying to come to AA because that's when you had incidents in the AA groups, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me just tell you also. So during that period, it was the worst experience that I wouldn't want to. Once we hear a little bit about this recovery deal, and we've tasted a little bit of that relief, I remember crawling on those hotel rooms, just being so angry with myself for not being able to get. And once you're in that cycle of living on the streets, working out of hotel rooms, doing things for money, now I've also had all the money in the world to support whatever habit I wanted. There was never any shortage of anything. And during that time, I used to call Reggie, or used to, but he always answered my calls. And if he couldn't answer, there was always a message back. He didn't entertain me, let me just tell you that. Because I could speak a lot. But what he did was he always answered with a sense of love and care. And I never doubted that if I mean, obviously I was full of self-pity. It's not about that. It's about building that trust and knowing that there's at least one person, because by this time I've lost touch with my entire family. And we did lose touch because I lost another phone, and I don't know. I just, phones and living on the streets, not something that really, I mean, it got lost all the time. And time and time again, I tried to go into the rooms of AA, and I got banned from meetings because of the way I showed up. I was drunk, I was high, um, walked in there, begged them for help. And I mean, yes, maybe, most of it, like I say, those 3 years that I was there was mainly in blackout. I don't know how people survive not being in blackout, but yeah, they threw me out.
So what happened? How did you get back?
Well, then I stopped drinking, got taken up in hospital, and I hope I can mention this in here very quickly. So I decided, I met someone during um, a night out. And anyway, so moved in with this guy, which was a saving grace, I think, at the time. But within 2 days, I was in his house. And about a month later, I decided to stop drinking. And I explained that I might have seizures and I might have, but probably not, because it didn't happen the first time. By this time, the doctor phoned me. My liver was a fatty liver disease. It was early cirrhosis. My kidneys wasn't functioning. Um, Same as Reggie, and I think I related there. Lost control of my bladder. I was busy dying. My body was poisoning itself, and I stopped drinking, and I did have seizures. And I almost bit my tongue off, and he rushed me to hospital. And now this was about 3 or 4 years ago. What was it, 2022? And 2 Sundays ago, and I was there. They admitted me. It was a terrible thing. I had another seizure just as we got to hospital. And 2 Sundays ago, I went to my face-to-face meeting, and this lady pulled me aside, and she said, "Are you Shanell?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You know what? When I just started going to the online meetings, she remembers me from that, and they always wondered what happened to me. And her daughter was in a very serious car accident the evening that I stopped drinking and had those seizures, and she wasn't sure if she should approach me, so she went out and found a sponsor." And by the time she got back to come and see how I am, just to tell me that she's there, and I was gone already. And she said for this whole entire time, from that evening until today, when I met her, well, when I saw her there, she was praying for me and hoping that I could find my way back to God and back to the program. And I got chills when she did that, because we might think that we're doing this thing alone. We might think that we not supported, but we just never know who's praying for us. We don't know who's out there, doing this with us, without. And this is something that Reggie taught me. God doesn't need permission to work in my life. So while I'm doing all these things, and while I'm being banned from meetings, because also, I kind of, after that, I stopped drinking for a little while. I didn't come back to the AA though, because I can do this, and I've been now banned, and I'm very upset with the AA and with CA and with the whole deal of this thing. And I just couldn't. My mind was driving me insane, and slowly deteriorated, and then every 3 or 4 months picked up a drink again, and just for a day or two, because then I know that the family won't be too upset with me, so I planned it out nicely until my daughter, for the first time since we moved over to the UK in 2017, that she was going to go visit the dad. It was going to be the first time that she saw her, and I got drunk that day, and I tore up the paperwork, a passport. We need letters and things for them to go into the country. And I tore it up, and yet again, the police was found. And yet again, I was lying. And for the first time, while I was sitting in that cell, and it wasn't the worst. It wasn't by far, no means, it was the worst drunk I ever had. And I hated being locked up. Everyone would hate it, but because that being alone with myself, I just couldn't stand it. And I went on my knees and I just said, what, just let me sit here, just be with me. But when I get out of here, the next day I found Reggie. And I just couldn't fight anymore. The fight was over.
And how is it with your family now? We worked the steps,
Yeah.
and very thoroughly. You did amends. And how did all that go with you and your family? And how is your relationship now?
So, obviously working the steps, I still have a little bit of self-will inside of me, which I get burnt, hit over the fingers. Not so much by Reggie, but my life. But through this whole experience, let me tell you that that little boy that I kicked from me, the one that didn't want to go to bed alone at night, the one that was so far removed from me, and even my girls, So about 3 months ago, I don't know, time goes, but about 3 months ago, he came to me and he asked me if he can start meditating with me, because he wants to be like me and accept people without having to. And it's I'm not by all means saying that I get this right every time, but he wants to be less affected by what other people he's just went to secondary school, less affected by the people around him. He wants to, so I mean, it's completely different. My girls, they come to me and we take these things for granted so much. The little hugs in the mornings, kisses at night, the fact that they won't go anywhere without me being part of whatever they experience. My daughter just moved to London now, and it's been scary, but it's been one of the most beautiful experiences because every step, everything that she did in the planning and in the moving, all she wanted was me to help her, because all she wanted was a mother with her. And that oldest daughter of mine, she took the longest to forgive me. She wanted nothing to do with me. Or even after my son moved in with us, while I was still in Rochester for a little bit, she didn't want anything to do with me. Nothing to do with me. And this is I think what attracts me to certain people in the fellowship. It's not about what they say in the meetings. It's not about the way they share or the way they speak. But if I want, to me, what it means, if you want what I have, look at my life outside of AA. Look at my family life. See what my work life is. Ask my manager, ask the team. Those are the things that's important to me.
And some of the biggest benefits. I always talk about how we're a tornado in the lives of people. And we tear those people apart with the serial relapse and stuff that we do. And some of the best moments in my life have come through Shanell. Her son came on Shanell and I always talk FaceTime, right? Because she's in London and I'm in Los Angeles. We do FaceTime, and her son popped into the phone and he said he wanted to thank me for bringing his mom back to him. And he loves her so much. And Shanell was having trouble like with her housing stuff, and she's worried about, like she's trouble with someone in her family who's an alcoholic, and she's worried about that. And she's wanting to get her kids out of that environment and wanting to take it back. And her kids, all three of them, came to her and said, "Mom, just be still. Don't go back with this guy just to get us out of this. Just be still." And they love their mother so much. And I look at stuff like that, and I'm able to watch stuff like that. And I watch how the program Cocaine Anonymous works and how it brings families back together. And all I got to say is, you have been such a blessing in my life. And I try to tell her, and hopefully you guys got a little glimpse of it today, how much more you for me than I've done for you, right? And I'll let you have the last word here.
Well, thank you. I just want to get the message out there, and if it didn't come across, haven't done this justice, but the most important thing is what that Reggie's told me through being sponsored is that I'll never give up on anyone. I am not God. I don't have the ability to get anyone sober or to make them do whatever I can suggest. The main thing, and I know what's written on the pages, but we don't miss the big parts where it tells us that our only responsibility is to be there for the next alcoholic and to help them achieve sobriety. Don't read what we want to see just because it's going to be hard or that they're not going to get it. It's not going to be easy. Don't miss the important parts. And you know what? I want to tell you, and I'll end on this, is for the first time in my life, I know that no matter how much I mess up or big my problem or happy or sad I am, I always know that there's someone that I can trust. And anyway, for that, I'm eternally grateful. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you guys for allowing us to share.